Alright, this is JP with WargamerOnline, and we are bringing you the worst armies of Age of Sigmar, and today we are talking about Gloomspite Gitz.
This podcast is made possible by our patrons.
I'm joined by Luke.
Hi there guys, how you doing?
And our resident Gitz expert, Nathan.
Hello, how's it going?
And so, yeah, we're going to basically be giving you a run-through of, why people think that Gloomspite Gitz is weak, and why actually they're just, secretly busted, They're the faction with the Gobblepalooza, so there you go. But, yeah, let's kick right into it. So, I don't think anyone who plays Age of Sigmar, it's much of a secret to them that Gloomspite Gitz as, like, a competitive army are regarded as one of the weaker armies. So, before we get into your secret, techniques and stuff, Nathan, what do you think the reason is that in general they sort of they struggle in the meta and struggle to be competitive?
I guess they've got probably one of the weaker, probably the more inconsistent allegiance abilities in the Bad Moon.
Yeah, that's true. For people who don't know, the Bad Moon it gets a bunch of buffs, and it moves across the table, but it doesn't start on the table, right? And so on your turn one, you don't get it at all, and you then have to roll for it moving, which means it can end up going off the table early or staying off the table in your first couple turns. So, yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I mean, and so basically they miss out on a load of free rules that a lot of other, like all the good factions, all get free rules, don't they? Mm-hmm. So with their allegiance abilities, and then a lot of other, like all the top races get like sub factions and stuff, which are another layer of free rules. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Gloomspite Gitz don't really get any of that either. So they're missing out on 2 layers of free rules a lot of the time, and then sometimes when the free rules are working. So when the Bad Moon does turn up, then I mean it's a great thing when it's on the table. Don't get me wrong, but you have to be fair. You have to be quite good to take advantage of it. I think it's not just something that just happens. Mm-hmm. You have to play it to take advantage of it. And what else have we got there? So the other free rules, actually, the terrain piece they've got is quite good, actually. Mm-hmm. So that's probably not a reason, although it does sort of force you to play in a certain area a lot of the time, and so you can be a bit predictable. Mm-hmm. So it's quite easy to play against a Gloomspite Gitz army because you know where they're going to be a lot of the time. So yeah, and then obviously one of the big things in the Gloomspite Gitz book, which is actually something that the game designers pointed out in not the FAQs, it's the designer notes, that the keywords are really constrictive to the point that things that are grots are not grots, and things that have got squigs are not squigs, etc. So a lot of things are missing keywords that you would think, well, it would be nice to get that extra layer of buffs if you could get them, but it just doesn't work that way.
That's a big thing, I think, right? Like fanatics are not grots; they don't have the grot keyword. I know what we joke about the Gobblepalooza a lot, but one of the Gobblepalooza abilities gives a grot hero the ability to reroll all their hits, but it doesn't work on like the Loon boss on Mangler, even though he is. He looks like a grot. He doesn't have the grot keyword.
Yeah, exactly. So the keywords are very constrictive, and then a lot of the buffs. So it does. The Gloomspite book works a lot off of buff combos, and there's a lot of holy withins, this and that, which is the same with a lot of books, but they can be a constrictive. And also they're all the buff pieces are not very durable, so it's quite easy to break those chains of buffs. So
yeah, I know. Like sneaky distraction, the -1 to hit is like the only debuff in the game where the enemy has to be wholly within to be affected by it, which means like all the time you've got, your opponent can have 19 out of 20 infantry within that circle and just leave one guy half out and he's not affected at all, which is very rare for debuffs. So yeah, Sneaky Distraction, which is -1 to hit, is requires your enemy to be wholly within 12 inches to be affected by the debuff, which is, I think, like the only debuff I know of where you have to be, where the enemy has to be wholly within. They can sort of abuse it by having 19 infantry fighting and one guy just on the edge of the debuff. So that, again, as you say, it's all quite constricting.
Yeah, it's a weird one, that one. I mean, if compared to like the Zinch -1 to hit thing,
Yeah.
it's your units have to be within the 12, whereas so you can manage that. It's your army, you can line it up, but obviously it's a weird debuff where you've got to try and corral your enemy to get wholly within 12.
Yeah. And even
So-
though, sorry, carry on. Oh,
Sorry, that was a
no worries, no
call.
worries.
Yeah, so yeah, it just takes a bit of planning to
Yeah.
try and get stuff in. So which is, and a little bit more planning than you would with.
Yeah, I think that's correct, because even stabbers, right, even the grots with their nets, it's only enemy models within range of a model with a net. You're not even just saying, okay, I've got nets in my grots, so they're -1 to hit. You've got to be sort of correctly positioning your netters within your stabbers or shooters, and your opponent's got to have the specific models within range. So as you say, like, you're sort of working extra hard to get these same debuffs that other factions are sort of just getting sort of for free.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy because a lot of it's like units wholly within or models wholly within. Like even the Light of the Moon, a lot of the buffs are models wholly within. Like I learned one just this weekend. I was playing a game on TTS, and I didn't realize the Fangs of the Moon was not, the unit didn't have to be wholly within. It was the number of models of the enemy unit. I was like, what? Because the only way I played it was if a unit is wholly within, then it's a target. But it's actually the number of enemy models of that unit that are wholly within the Light of the Moon.
Oh man!
Like, oh my word! That's
yeah.
complicated.
It does feel a little bit like, when the Grot book came out, that they sort of wanted you to be able to play Grots, Squigs, Trogs, and Spiders all in one list, but they didn't want you to make it too abusable, so they like keyword restrict, and they just seems like they were overly careful. So they were like, we're gonna try and almost make sub-factions via these keywords, and then the keywords are sort of too strict.
Yeah,
it's not the more competitive lists that me and Nathan play quite a bit. It's like you're saying about the terrain piece, kind of, where your opponent's going to be, and even all the buff pieces keeps you in that kind of you stay in that castle, so you kind of know how to play them. But Nathan does play the army very well, and as you go into it, it can be very, very strong. A lot stronger than what it's showing on the stats anyway. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think we cover this all the time when we're talking about this stuff, but a big thing that you do see happen with a faction like Gloomspite Gitz is people are like, okay, they're not one of the strongest factions, they're not one of the easiest factions to just pick up and win. So people just sort of say, okay, well, I like the models and I want to play them, and if I'm not going to win, I'm not going to worry about playing particularly well or optimizing my list, and that can bring a faction down in the stats. If you're just going, like when, I played Gitz at a tournament, I just brought Gobblepalooza because I was like, they might not be the most competitive choice, but if I'm playing this army overall for fun, I don't want to worry about optimizing it. And I think sort of that has this sort of magnifying effect where an army can be sort of, just under the 50% mark for win rate, and it just drops down and down because people play it and they're like, well, I'm not super worried about bringing a competitive list.
Oh yeah, definitely. It is. I think it's actually one of the most popular armies. Not that you'll see in tournament play probably, but I think like the models that they've sold
Absolutely.
are one of the most popular sales that they've had, ranges that they've sold.
And it makes sense, right? Like the models are amazing. Like it's hard to think of a bad Gitz model, you know. Like even when you're mixing in like older models like the Fellwater Trogos, they still look quite cool. They fit the sort of goofy theme of the army. So it's just like Gitz armies tend to just always look awesome. They've got that quirky charm and stuff like that. So okay, so yeah, here we have an example of one of Nathan's, you know, big brain gross list. So we've discussed about how, you know, Gitz are struggling overall, you know, in general. But, you know, when we have a mastermind on the show like this, you know, this is where we're going to get the insights on you know, how specific players like Nathan are doing well and are just winning game after game with this sort of underrepresented faction. So, Nathan, why don't you take us through your list, and then we can talk a little bit about like your play style and what you do differently to other people.
Cool. I mean, yeah, this is the list that I took to a one-dayer.
Mm-hmm.
One of the few one-dayers that we managed to squeeze in last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fortunate enough to win that one-dayer with this list. So, yeah. It's all right. It's all right.
So, very humble.
Good.
100% tournament win rate last year.
Yeah. The unadulterated filth is what's on the screen right now. If you're watching with your kids, turn them away.
Sure. So these guys are obviously Gloomspite Gitz from the realm of Shimon. The main reason is that's where Scragrot lives. So there you go. From the lore.
Yeah. Look at taking out events, narrative gamer. He's got it all.
So there we go. So we got Scragrot the Loon King. He's the general, because that's a lot of his abilities only work if he's the general.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he's all right for that. And he's got the Hand of Gork spell, which is the teleport spell from the lore, which is sort of almost in all the lists. I think it's super useful spell. Probably I use it maybe slightly differently to a lot of how other people use it, but we can go through that in a bit.
Tantalizing.
Then we've got on page 73. Find it all up. Fungoid Cave Shaman. So I've got two of those. They're great little pieces. Like Scragrot, you can also get extra command points from them.
Mm-hmm.
Command points always great to use. So yeah. So the first one has got Great Green Spite, which is a long-range magic missile spell, and if you've got big units of grots nearby, it can do up to d6 damage, and then that decreases if you've got smaller amounts of grots. But as you'll see, I've got some quite large units, so I can normally do the d6. And then the other one is Squiggler, which gives you run and charge on, I think it's D3 units when you get that spell off. So yeah,
nice.
Very good. Then I've got a Loon Boss just on foot. Little fella, 70 points. He's naturally -1 to be hit. So you combine that with Lookout Sir, so that could make him -2. Or if he stood next to a Netta, he could be -2 from in melee as well. So it's pretty good. And he's just really a buff piece for the big unit of stabbers that I've got. Then I've got a Loon Boss on Mangler Squigs with the Clammy Cowl, which is a -1 to hit cloak that he wears. So he's just a really fast damage dealing missile. I can obviously put Squiggler on him, make him faster, and he's quite good at you can send him off if you need to do something on your own. You need a unit that will operate on its own. He's quite good.
Castle.
Yeah. Or he can take the Boingrop Bounders with him, and he can look after them for like inspiring presence, stuff like that, and also buff them with his command ability. So yeah, he works nicely with them. So he's 280 points. You probably are better off swapping him out for another 15 point got bounders if you just want pure damage. But I think you do need to be able to have heroes and monsters for some of the different scenarios, and he provides both of those keywords as well. So
yeah, totally.
I just think it helps with some of the missions as well. So yeah, that's why he's in there.
Fit in sneaky places.
Yeah, also true, right? Sometimes it is sometimes there's sometimes jobs that need to be done by someone on one base, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So he's on a relatively small base. I think it's just
it's quite it's like 50 or 60.
70 mil. 70.
It might be an 80 mil basically.
Yeah, I think it's smaller. I think it is 50 or 60.
Whatever it is, it's a different size to what it is in real life. I mean he's mainly there because I do think I need a survivable hero.
Sure.
So he's got a few more wounds than the other ones. He's -1 to be hit, and also for some of the missions you definitely need a monster, so like focal points and stuff like that. So then I've got a unit of 20 shooters, mainly there for screening and just occupying board space. A few shots, but it's mainly as a screen really, or if you need something to hold an objective for a while. So pretty good. 420 points. It's got 20 wounds, so it's not bad. Also, there's netters in there, so it's a -1 to be hit unit as well, if you can line them up in the right places.
Yeah.
Then a little squig herd, just to fill out the battle line really, and also just another little unit if you need to hold a back objective, screen out a corner, that sort of thing. Cheap little unit, quite good for some of the secondaries as well. So in this one-dayer, if you're playing a one-dayer, obviously you've got to make sure you capitalize on the secondaries, so they help with that sort of thing as well. A little throwaway unit, but also, it's not a bad little unit. For 70 points, it's great.
Yeah.
Then, so here we've got the big unit of stabbers. So
killing machines.
I think I put. I think you got spears there, but it should actually be the little hand stabbers. So they've which hit on 4s rather than 5s. Only 1-inch range, but you've got 9 netters in there as well. So so the netters do a lot of work, and then the little stabbers are great. They get a big buff when they're in the horde of +2 to wound, and then that decreases as you start killing them. But you've got to kill 30 of them for that to change. So
nice.
Pretty good. And then the loon boss will buff that unit. Any 6s to wound can do mortal wounds. So so they can actually go through armor quite readily. Especially if you can get the number of attacks up, which is why we've got units of sneaky snufflers. So sneaky snufflers can increase the number of attacks that units do. So if you put 1 snuffler on there, obviously 1 attack. You can double snuffle them, which gives you an extra round of attacks, but you take 2d6 mortal wounds for doing that, which I don't think I've ever done yet, and I keep wanting to do it, but I'm still waiting for the right.
It's like I think last time we were talking about what's that spell in Zinch where you bring back demons, but if you roll a 1, you kill.
Reality.
Yeah, fold reality. If you roll a 1, you kill the whole unit. It's kind of like that. You know, the first time you do it, you're going to roll a 12 for the 2d6.
Which I still don't mind. The 6
true.
They're about to go in. I'm like, that's fine. I'll take that trade, because then they probably will delete whatever they touch. But it's just waiting for the. There were a couple of times when I think I should have used it, and I didn't for some reason. So
Good in the
this-
OBR matchup, aren't they? Get
Oh,
rid of
yeah.
that big one.
Yeah.
I should have used them in that game against Owen, but I never did. The sneaky snufflers can also buff the Boingrok Bounders.
Oh,
So I've got
okay.
a unit of 15 of them. So, and the snufflers can also buff the Loon Boss on Anglerskrig. So
Oh, nice.
quite often they will it'll be in waves. So one unit will buff the Loon Boss and he'll go off and go and cause havoc. And then the other unit will buff the Stabbers. And then this is where I use Hanagork a lot, is
Mhm.
on the snufflers to get them into places that they need
Oh,
to
yeah.
be. Because it has to be at the start of the movement phase. And they can't move if they've
Yeah.
snuffled somebody up. If they've fed them the special mushrooms. So, so Hanagork is key for that a lot of the time. I mean, beginning of the game, I guess it's a good idea to go and throw your 60 stabbers at somebody, but the problem is then you start missing out on your buffs and stuff.
Mhm.
They're far away from the Loon Boss. They don't get snuffled. And they tend to die quite fast. They've only got a 6-up save, which is a 5-up. Well, there's loads of them. So, yeah, I think it's better to use your Hanagork to move your buff pieces around, really.
Okay.
A lot of
Yeah,
the
that's
time.
good tip.
Right, and then I've got 5 Spore Splatter Fanatics, and they buff the 60 Stabbers as well.
Yeah.
So if they're within 12 inches, I think the range is now, only within, obviously, then they become frenzied, and this is at the start of the hero phase, I think it is. Yeah, it's been a while since I played with these guys. bloody COVID. So so they're just there to buff that big unit of stabbers, really, and they'll follow them around. And then when it comes to a certain time, I can just send them in because they have the always strikes first keyword.
Oh, yeah.
So if you like towards mid to late game,
Mhm.
when the board starts getting a bit emptier,
Yeah.
they can go in and like finish off a monster or a small unit of whatever's left, really. So they're quite good at finishing off stuff.
Yeah,
and
I
you get
think
the extra activation as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip. I know a lot of times you can see people playing where they think of these, they use these buff pieces. It can be a hero or something like that, and they just sort of leave it buffing. But yeah, I think it's a good point, especially if you're playing an army that's maybe a little bit underpowered out of the book. You want to be making sure you're getting all of that mileage out of every unit you have.
Exactly. So I will also point out at this stage that the sneaky snufflers are grots too, and so they can also be frenzied. They've got 2 attack profiles.
Nice.
So you can get 6 of them. Could have 2 going up to 4 attacks a model.
Mm-hmm.
If they're frenzied, and then you could snuffle them with the other units. So they could have 6 attacks a model. And the Loon Boss could give them the buff as well. So
you get some mortal wounds out of that, yeah.
Yeah, again, so a little unit of snufflers right at the end of the game. Nobody's going to expect them to suddenly turn up and start laying down law. So, yeah, so it can happen. And obviously the Spore Splatters will also frenzy the Loon Boss, who's not bad actually for a little hero.
Yeah.
Got a little D3 damage weapon. He can make extra attacks. He suddenly can kick out 4 or 5 things.
Yeah.
Attacks, at D3. And obviously they can also snuffle. They can also frenzy Scraggy.
He's not bad, Scraggy.
Yeah, he's all right, but with
thinking out all the taggy shots.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately it doesn't work on shooting weapons, but that weapon that he's got, I'm pretty sure the Moon on the Stick is also
it's both.
melee as well as the shooting. So yeah, he can give you some bad headaches with his stick. Then to round it off, I've got some ender spells, which is what Gloomspite Gitz always seem to need. So the one that you never leave home without, if you're a Gloomspite Gitz player, is the Scuttle Tide.
Mm-hmm.
A fantastic spell. Just any piece of terrain on the board, wholly within 6, you set this fella up. He attacks a unit immediately with 1 inch, within 1 inch. You're rolling 6 dice, and on 5 ups, you're doing mortal wounds. So it's like a little bit of damage.
Mm-hmm.
It's normally one or two mortal wounds. I have once rolled the full house, which was great. That was great. So it's like the best feeling in the world.
You're just telling your opponent, you're like, it's probably just 1 or 2 wounds. I wouldn't worry about it. And then just smash him with the 6.
Take it off. Take the hero off.
Take your toys off, mate. Yeah, little hero just disappeared under a horde of spiders. It was great. And then anything that finishes a move or a charge within 6 inches,
Yeah, I think
I
it's
want to
6,
say. Yeah. Then it attacks them as well. So it's great for messing up people's movement. It's a long, thin in the spell that you can use to block things up as well. So make people go the long way around. So it's pretty good. And then the slightly off kilter or off meta sort of pick that I've gone for. It's basically because a lot of the time you can see I'm a lot of drops on my 4, 7, 10, 12 drops, something like that. So my opponent is normally giving me first turn because they want the double turn into me.
Yep.
So I was looking for something where I can just pump out a bit of damage. So obviously I've got that 24-inch pew pew spell, which is quite good. But normally you're just hitting a screen, if anything, with that.
Yeah.
But then, so I've got the Balewind and the Umbral Spell Portal. And this is to create the famous Spawnado. Famous, because everybody knows about it, sure. So what you do is you have your Fungoid Cave Shaman, one of them, right up on the front line. You get him to cast the Balewind Vortex.
Yeah.
You set that up just in front of him, so he climbs on top of that. And so now he's even closer to the enemy. And then you get good old Scraggy to come and cast the spell portal next to him. And then you can set that up. Normally you can set that up now quite nice into your enemy's deployment area. And then the Fungoid Cave Shaman can once per game cast an extra spell. So this is where he starts pumping his own spell, his War Scroll spell through the thing, which is called Spore Maw. And it's a spell that you'll never see cast.
I don't think I've ever even looked at it.
Yeah, so what it does is it attacks models within D6 inches. That's why you never see it.
Yeah.
And it does D3 mortal wounds to each unit within D6 inches.
Okay.
So obviously, you pump that through the portal. It's now D6 plus 6 inches because you're on a Balewind, and all units in that area take D3 mortal wounds. So
that's Phil. Yeah. That's Phil.
So yeah, it's a little
Croaknado.
Yeah, Bornado, not Croaknado. Yeah. So yeah. The first game at the one day, I think I did like 36 or something. First turn into an ogre army. It was great. Little MSU ogre army.
Classic. They're just sitting there. They're like, "Oh, it's Gitz. I'll give him turn 1."
And then
what can you do?
I did. Yeah. So it's like I say, it's just because you get given first turn so many times, and so I just wanted to try it out. Obviously, it's relying on you casting 3 spells, and you're not getting any pluses to cast first turn other than Scraggy casting the portal. So it's probably it's fairly easy to stop, but it's a threat, isn't it?
Yeah, it
also,
does give you something to do on that turn 1.
Yeah, exactly. And also, you can always put Scraggy on
Mm-hmm.
the Balewind, or he can cast his spell through the portal.
Mm-hmm.
Nick it.
Oh,
Try
yeah.
and relieve somebody of their artifact if they've got one that's like proper
Yeah.
important. Yeah, just try and take it off of them. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, that turn one gives you turn one options when otherwise you might just sort of be shuffling forward.
Yeah. And it makes the Fungoid more survivable. You get +1 to save. So I in one of the games, he was on the Balewind in terrain, so he was +2.
Unkillable.
So
Unkillable, infinite damage. He's basically Lord Croak, but for 90 points. That's what you're telling us.
He's got 4 up off damage save.
He's can't stop, won't stop.
He's only got 4 wounds.
Yeah.
It's great. So yeah, that's my list. That tournament I played against, like I say, an MSU Ogre Army first game. Then I played a Seraphon Thunder Lizard thing with loads of knights, Saurus knights.
Yeah.
A couple of Stegodons with big bows and stuff. And then I played a Legion of Nagash thing with extra fast zombie dragons. So yeah. So yeah, it does all right against those armies, but obviously you probably struggle against other ones. But
nah, you'd be fine. I reckon you could probably take on. If you get the Spornado off, it's over for anyone. No one can handle that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
Catapults.
Oh yeah.
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 Yeah, it's got chip damage, but that's not enough to really take out a catapult. You'd struggle to hit it with the Spornado because they're probably right at the back of the field. So yeah.
Okay.
And then the Skull Tide will start doing damage, but just not enough to turn the catapult off for a few turns. So you've got to weather a storm, and them catapults will take off droves of stabbers and things like that.
Yeah, so, it's a sad day. The Spore Splatter Fanatics, they block line of sight, right?
Yep.
So you can... Let's pretend there's a world where you can hide 60 stabbers behind 5 Spore Splatter Fanatic.
Well, you can protect your characters, can't you? From them. And actually the stabbers get +1 to save against shooting.
True,
so they are on a 4-up save against the no rend catapult.
Yeah.
So
they're fine. They're fine. Don't even worry about it. Don't even worry about bravery checks. I certainly don't.
You can always bring them back as well if you roll that 4.
Oh yeah, that's true. Okay, so that's sort of a run through of how Nathan's thinking about his list. So thanks for that. So from an outsider's perspective, Luke, what are your thoughts on having played against Grots? I don't know if you played with Grots, but maybe you have. But what are your thoughts on them? Like, what do you think? What have you seen? As a non-Grots player, what have you seen where you're like, oh, I think that's kind of weak. That could do with the buff, or I think this is really strong, and I think Gitz players could leverage this more.
So, when I first returned to playing Warhammer, Age of Sigmar, Nathan, we played a lot. There's another guy called Dan Bradshaw, and we all played quite a lot. Very rarely did I beat Nathan's Gitz, because it's just that castle is so hard to break down. If you play that castle well and you move it up together, I know you kind of got to keep him with the immune to battle shock from the terrain piece, but Nathan always has all these MSU units that can just reach out and get things that he needs to get, and then that big block of stabbers, it does so much damage. I know there's little goblins that they can do so much damage, and they are really hard to kill, and especially if you put your netters in the right place, they're like negatives to hit. So it's a really hard army to break down. You can't just hit. I used to, when we were playing a lot, and how I adapted in the end, it's just I was just hitting these bodies, but then I was getting stuck on the bodies, and then it just whittled me down, and I would never win the grinding game. And the way to beat Gitz is you have to kill these buff pieces, which is probably why they struggle a bit now, is because those buff pieces can be picked off, can't they? By
Yeah.
Sigmar and Seraphon and stuff. They can take that away from the Gitz. Is what the Gitz really need.
Yeah.
I
That
mean, I
makes sense.
played a guy called Richie at Facehammer. It's a very, very bad matchup for the Ideneth. But I learned a trick there where he was deploying all his goblins on top of his terrain piece. I was like, oh, why are you doing that? Because he says, oh, you can just fly on top of it and charge all my buff pieces. But the first turn, straight away, he just forgot about it and moved all his goblins off his terrain piece. And I had that in the back of my mind. That's the only out I've got to beat him.
Uh-huh.
So I just went for it, and I put Volturnos on top of his little on the terrain piece, and then he charged off and killed the Loom boss and killed all his. I just broke it down that way. After playing Nathan so much, I just didn't engage the goblins and just went and killed the buff pieces.
Yeah. I think that's good advice, because I know, right, like the individual goblins die quite fast, but I know, you charge 60 stabbers with a bunch of buffs, and you feel like you do a lot of damage, and you can kill 20 of them, 30 of them, but there's still 30 left. And as Nathan said, their buffs don't even start going away till they get below 30. So even if you're getting good rolls and doing a lot of damage, you've sort of done enough damage to kill a normal unit in Age of Sigmar, but because of these debuffs and just the huge number of stabbers in a block of 60, they're still there. And then, as you said, you're sort of like the Gitz player is hoping that you're stuck fighting those stabbers so they can hit you from the side and they can grind you out with the buffs and stuff like that. So finally, we've given the viewers some advice on how to take down the Grots players.
There's a neat trick for the Grots. Is that what I noticed when I played Richie is that I tried to just whittle these Grot units down to like 3 or 4 models left, and because Scuttle Tide can actually hurt your Grot units.
Oh, nice.
He used that to kill the last 2-3 models in a unit, so then he could try and go for the 4-up, getting the unit back, which he got. So that's a nice little trick for the Gloomspite. If you really need that, more bodies on the objectives, and you've got like a unit of 2 running around, you can just wipe it out with your own spell. And, try and get it back.
Yeah, I've seen that actually multiple times. I know one of the things you can do is you stay right on the edge of your Battle Shock immune section, and then if you get down to a very few number of models, you can pile in out of your 12-inch bubble, so that you're just guaranteed that your last couple Grots are going to run away. If you've started with 60 and you're down to 5 or 6, you can just pile them out so they have to take that Battle Shock test, and then they all just, you don't have to worry about them staying around if they are taking a Battle Shock test, and then you can go for that 4-up. Again, that's sort of a little bit of the stuff that Gitz have to do, where you're like, I'm desperately trying to kill my own unit so that I can try and roll a 4+, so that I can try and win priority, so that I can try and get this objective back. But they do come back. They're only limited to, they're within range of the Loon Shrine, but it's only outwith of 3 of enemies as opposed to 9, like most of that stuff. So you do come back sort of where you want. So that is good.
And the other thing that Nathan was saying at the beginning, Nathan never relied on the moon. Like you were saying, just always use that as a like, don't rely on it. If it comes, then it's a benefit. But it's just what it is, so random. I know that's why Scraggrot's in there, because you can kind of make that more reliable, but never rely on it. But when it does happen, try and capitalize on it when it does. Yeah,
well, that's very, very thematic for Gitz, right? The moon and everything else is like, you got to be ready for all this randomness. You've got to be ready for, your Loon boss. He moves 3d6, which is sometimes 3. But yeah, so Nathan, I think you made a good point earlier where you were talking about how you're often using your Hand of Gork to sort of move your buff pieces to where they need to be. And I think definitely something I've seen from people playing Gitz before is they'll do something like, okay, well, I'm just going to teleport my Boingrot Bounders and hope for a 9-inch charge. They don't get it, and then the Boingrot Bounders die. I was just wondering, so what do you think are some sort of major tips? Like, so if I was just going to be starting out playing Gloomspite Gitz, and I was like, okay, I've come to this video because Nathan is the guy. He's the man. He's on a 100% win streak with this list. I've net listed this exact list. It's in my basket. It's on my way to my house. And I'm thinking, okay, what do I need to know before I go into my games?
Just get really good at rolling 4-ups. Everything relies on 4-ups. You're hitting on 4s, your stuff is coming back on 4s, all of that. It's one of the armies you've got to play quite a lot of a lot of games to get.
Uh-huh.
Get your head around all the buff bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, I'm still learning stuff,
Yeah.
and I've been playing it since the book came out. So, yeah, you've got to be tight with your buff bubbles. You've got to, your movement has got to be tight, because like the loon boss thing is wholly within 12.
Yeah.
All of that. That list that I gave you is probably not the most competitive list. It's just the one that the last one that I played without a tournament.
This list is for advanced users only.
Sure. You gotta get lucky. I got lucky. So, yeah, I think, you've just got to look at what your play style is, and then the nice thing about the Gitz book is that there are a few other options as well. So if you don't like moving big blocks dudes, you can look at the Troggoths. The Troggoth side, at the moment, they've got their own allegiance ability, which is a white dwarf thing, and they're actually not too bad. The actual Troggoth itself, as a standalone war scroll, the Rocket and the Fellwater Troggoths are both pretty good for their points. They're both decent war scrolls, so there is that option. And then the Squig army is a lot of fun, but it's also actually pretty good. It's fast, and with the new war scroll, the new battalion war scroll, which gives you the double damage on the charge on the bites, it's actually pretty offensive.
More reliable the movement as well now. The reroll.
Rerolling the movement, which is huge, because that random movement really screws you over.
I remember setting up my loon boss on Mangler Squigs right on the flank, edging him forward, and now I'm like, okay, it's turn 3, he's under the moon, he's running and charging, 4d6, he's going 5 inches, nothing is happening, I'm moving him backwards, everybody's upset. So I guess that's...
Oh yeah, my Boingroff Bounders have cost me a couple of games where I've rolled the double 1 for their movement. So it's just like, just when I needed them to move up, just 5 inches would have been okay, but 2 inches. No, that's the game.
Yeah, so I guess a big part of again all of this is going to be like, you are going to be having to make do with a lot of situations that you're not necessarily wanting to find yourself in, because you are going to be in the situation where your Boingroff Bounders have moved 2 inches, and now you need to send your sneaky snufflers into combat or something like that. So you probably you got to be adaptive.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like what Luke said, he played against Richie, and Richie won't play with the Squigs because he just can't take the random movement. And don't blame him. The Richie style of list is probably the most competitive. Just double down on those big blocks of stabbers. Take a loon boss as your general, because then he's got a 24-inch bubble instead of a 12-inch bubble on his command ability. The mortal wound one, so then he can hide behind the shrine and pretty much just like shout at the oi, stab him real good. I'll wait for you. So that's sort of a list, and then just make sure you got all the buff pieces. Probably, if you can, try and get a couple of each unit in for redundancy.
Makes sense.
And then there's obviously the Spider Fang. They're really struggling with their battle line, the Spider Riders, but the big guys, the Arachnaroks, are actually pretty good, especially as spellcasters. So they're getting a +1. So if you give them like the Arachna Cauldron, there's another +1. Get the moon shining on them, you can have another +1. So,
Mini Nagash.
And they're two cast wizards as well. So
got all sorts of discount croaks in Gloomspite Gitz.
You used the loon boss on the cave squid quite a bit, didn't you? Because there's just more wounds and
Yes. Yeah. So quite often I'll take the loon boss with the giant cave squig. So he's not riding it.
Uh-huh.
He's got an extra head. So this is the old Skarsnik model. He's got an extra wound, and he's got like a shooting attack. But yeah, sometimes you just need your loon boss to survive.
Yeah.
Just that extra turn, and so trying to scrape out the extra wounds is sometimes important.
Yeah. I mean,
sometimes having the one that's actually riding the squig as well. Sometimes, because he's got the extra wounds as well. Just having heroes nearby to give you inspiring presence or reroll ones to hit. Again, because your whole army, most of your army is only hitting on 4s.
Yeah.
So they're very susceptible to -1 to hit stuff. So if you can give them reroll 1s to hit, sometimes that will help you.
Yeah.
Did you get it from the moon? But, like I say,
yeah,
it's not very reliable. So yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
What about putting your list inside the squig faction? Does it gives all the guys rerolls to the move? But does it affect the list much?
It only really gives the rerolls to the squig guys, and then you then get pushed down a certain route with the command ability.
Yeah, and also
which is like reroll your battle shock or something like that. It's pretty rubbish. And then you also get forced into taking a screaming squig as your artifact. So
yeah, and also isn't it if you take the squig one, you can't regenerate grots out of the moon?
Yeah, then you start. That's only if your general is
a
squig keyword.
Okay.
So you can
just keep Scragrod as your general. Okay.
You can summon back squigs instead of grots.
If you want, yeah. Well, again, so I guess what we're seeing though is like we talked a little bit how they've got overly restrictive keywords and no sub-faction. Well, pseudo sub-factions now, but it does mean you have a lot of options like we've talked about for list building. You can put a little more of this. I've seen people who play, instead of where these Boingrot Bounders are, they have some Trogs as like the damage backup. There are really, a lot of awesome models obviously in Gloomspite Gitz, and there are a lot of ways you can build your list for a bit more of this or a bit more of that. And so that, it's a fun faction to do list building for sure.
And when you look at like their list of artifacts, the artifacts are pretty good. But again, they're sort of keyworded out, so only the loon boss can take certain ones. Or the weird one is that the madcap shamans take artifacts, but the fungoids can't. There you go. But I mean, the madcap shaman has got access to some really good artifacts.
The -1 rend, like reduce an enemy's save, right?
Yeah, the Moonface Mommet, probably the one that I would take more often than not. So I would swap out a fungoid for a madcap, give him the Moonface Mommet, and then at the start of the combat phase, he just picks a unit within 12, and it's not wholly within 12. and
you don't have to roll for it.
Yeah, you don't have to roll for it. You just curse them, and their save is reduced by 1 for that combat phase. So
which is really strong. It's just, again, it is weird that it's only on those madcap shamans, but yeah, it is a really strong rule. You have him run up behind your guys and just point his little stick at them.
Yeah, I mean, there are, again, you can do weird buff chains. You could make your stabbers like equivalent of -3 rend by combining it with the Moonface Moment. One of the Gobapalooza, the Shroomancer, has got a great spell, but again, it's like short range.
It's 8 inches. It's 8 inches.
Yeah.
When I saw that spell and I was like, this is almost worth bringing Gobapalooza. And then I saw it as 8 inches. I tried to cast it in my tournament. One time there was someone in range, and I failed to cast it. They had +1 to cast from the formation, and I was under the moon, so I was on like +2, and I just rolled like the double 1, and I was like, great.
Yeah.
Great.
I've cast it once in a game. It was great. the only problem is I cast the unit I cast it on only had a 5-up save. And I was attacking it with stuff which already was deleting its save. I was like, this is a waste of time, but at least I can say I've cast off this spell. So, and then obviously the Trog Hag has also got a -1 to your save spell.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so you could get pseudo rend, which would give you like some of the best rend in the game, but it's nearly impossible to apply.
Yeah, to actually build a list and get it off and all that. But it exists, so if anyone's out there hoping to try the sort of 5 rend, 5 attacks, do 2d6 mortal wounds to your own Stavas, you can kill just about anything with those angry little moon goblins.
Yeah, you just gotta persuade people to charge you. And then just wait their turn, and then take them off.
Perfect.
There's a nice trick that I think Nate's not mentioned it. He's done to me before. We used to use the web spinner on Ragnarok, and you could teleport that big spider, cast the cauldron, and then you can be like 5 inches away, not 9 inches away. So you need like a 5-inch charge, and then you can. He casts his -1 to hit spell, so you can make, like just capitalize on that. I know it relies on a lot happening, but.
Yeah. Again, I think if you are playing a faction that's a little bit weaker, you got to take your combos even if they're not guaranteed. But yeah, you can take the you can sort of fire that spider missile even without the cauldron, you can sort of teleport the spider while he's -1 to hit and shoot like geminids through your opponent's army, and now your spider's sort of sitting there -1 to hit from the spell, -1 to hit from the artifact, -1 to hit or attack, whichever is better because of geminids, and sort of have him be almost unkillable even though he's just sitting there next to your opponent's army. So there are a lot of combos you can do. Again, they're not that reliable, but there are a lot of tricks, and I think as Nathan said, you've got to get a lot of reps in with the army so that you're learning these combos. You're learning when you want to charge your snufflers in, when you want to teleport your snufflers, where you're hiding behind your fanatics and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so if you are Nathan, you're busting out your infamous Gloomspite Gitz. You're looking to continue your 100% win streak record. What are the factions, what are sort of the top factions that you want to play against and don't want to play against? So like the good and bad matchups.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it feels like every game is challenged when you bust them out. So, but every game you feel like you've sort of got a chance because if the dice are in your favor, these guys have got the chance to perform miracles. So there you go, which is great. So in that respect, they are super fun because you can sort of come up with imaginative ways out, and these guys got loads of tools. It does rely on you getting lucky though. Quite often. What armies do I like to play against? I mean, everybody likes to play against Iron Jaws, so them. Normally because they charge up to you. Yeah. And then they're quite good in a fight, but quite often your Gitz are as good in a fight. So if you choose, if you can manufacture the fight in the terms that you want, you can probably be sneaky enough to get through them. So I mean, destruction on destruction is always good fun anyway. So like ogres as well, I guess. I don't know, I guess always like taking a city's armies down a few pegs. They're normally low enough that you can get through to them. I guess shooting is still a problem, even though you've got some inbuilt anti-shooting stuff. You've got a -1 to hit from shooting spell, the Madcap Shaman, and also your blocks of grots normally have that extra pip of save against shooting. But you still struggle against shooting, and stuff that messes about with your already low bravery, or takes advantage of it. So stuff that screams at you and stuff like that. It's not good.
OBR, Flesh Eater Quartz.
Yeah. You're quite good at bogging stuff down, so
Mm-hmm.
so like Luke was saying with the Identity Deacon, yeah, a lot of Identity Deacon players can't get through the grots fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you can get board position, you can normally play through that, and they're one of the top armies, which we're not too bad against, to be honest.
Yeah.
But
always...
yeah, you struggle against people like Zinch and Seraphon, and I'm not played against them, but I'm guessing the same with Lumineth. Stuff that can shut your magic down, because you do rely on magic. I've played against Nagash a few times. That's a pain because he just shuts your magic down. So yeah, stuff that shuts your magic down, you've got quite a few buffs that you want, and you got some nice mortar wound output from there, which you really need because you don't have any other ranged output. So for dealing with enemy heroes and stuff, it's normally Nick, Great Green Spite, those sort of things. The spiders,
the Spornado.
The Spornado, all of that stuff's not happening. So yeah.
All right.
So yeah, you can't disrupt your enemy's buff pieces or shooting pieces.
Yeah, you really do need that. Yeah, they're quite reliant on their magic, and they don't quite have that level of magic domination that other armies do. You get some pluses. The moon gives your enemy a little bit of minus, but it's not like Zinch with their Destiny dice and dice matching, or obviously not like Teclis or Nagash. So, but sorry, Luke.
Definitely, there was
like what you're saying. You are in every game because you still have all these buff pieces that still just happens even if you don't get your magic off. But you do rely on that magic to reach out to some of those armies. Definitely.
Yeah, your head can drop if you're up against like a Nagash army. I've played it. It's happened to me. I've played against Nagash. I'm like, I'm not getting any magic off this game, and so my head goes down, and then suddenly the grots will perk me up again because they've just gone through a whole unit of stuff that just be like, I didn't need magic after all. Damn it.
Also, I think it's important to remember that it always is sort of still possible. I remember I was playing grots against Zinch, and I was like, I'm going to cast my spells because I might as well roll them. And I sort of got off my teleport, and my opponent failed to unbind it. And then I was sort of like, what do I do now? I was like, okay, so I put my spider and I just cast Geminids, and it was like, again, I cast Geminids I think on a 6/6 with +1 from the spider, and it was just like, oh, you can't stop it even with Destiny dice, and it just went off, and I was like, okay, well, here I am now, I guess. It's like, like Nagash, he has +3, which is very strong, but it's not always going to stop your magic, so you just got to be ready. As you say, you got to be prepared to play without it, and then still ready to take advantage of it if it comes off.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
But yeah, there's been several times where I've buffed up my grots and pushed them forward, and thought, well, they're buffed up, they're within range of the Loon Boss. If this guy charges me, I'm gonna have a great time. And then somebody charges you, and you have a great time. So, yeah.
They deliver. Yeah. The grots deliver. Plus, obviously, you always feel good, right, when you're taking people down with the grots. It's sort of like you either win or like it's just the expected result. You can always sort of laugh at your opponent either way. You could just be like, oh yeah, well you beat grots, well grats to you, or you lost the grots, and then you can laugh at them. It's all a bit. You got the moral high ground 100% of the time.
Definitely.
Alrighty, yeah. So that's us covering Gloomspite Gitz, one of the, until now, something you believed one of the worst armies in Age of Sigmar. Now you've seen the broken filth and combos, the 5 rend, the Spornado, all of that for the low price of 90 points or 120 points. It's basically free. It's filth. We've discovered it's filth. Anyway, just so that'll be all from us at WargamerOnline. I just want to say thank you very much to Nathan for coming on and telling us about these big brain Gitz tactics.
Sure. It's much The mushrooms that feed your brains. That's what it is.
Hey, look, wherever it comes from is good. So, yeah, that's a bye from me and Luke.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Thanks for listening.
All right, and yeah, bye, Nathan. Thanks for coming on again.
Cheers.
This video is made possible by our patrons. If you want to know more about how to support us, click on the link to the right.